A little girl walks up to a police officer and whispers three haunting words, "Follow me home." What the officers discover inside that house will break their hearts, shake their beliefs, and leave the entire town in tears. This is not just a story about mystery, it's a story about love, sacrifice, and a truth no one saw coming. Stay with me, because once you hear what really happened, you'll never forget it. This is not just a story, it's a piece of someone's hidden pain, quietly waiting to be heard. In today's story, we dive into a moment that can change everything, in the most unexpected way. Before we begin, where are you listening from? Canada, the US, Norway? Let us know in the comments. Because stories may begin anywhere, but they connect us all. Stay with us until the very end, because sometimes, what breaks your heart can also heal it. And if you believe stories can change lives, hit subscribe. Join our journey. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment. Your voice matters here. The city was alive with its usual noises, horns echoing from traffic, footsteps rushing across crosswalks, and the distant chatter of strangers. But in the middle of the noise, there was silence inside Officer Daniel Carter's heart. He was sitting in his patrol car, his partner sipping stale coffee, when a small hand tapped on the window. It was a little girl, frail, no more than 7 years old, her dress wrinkled, her eyes carrying a weight too heavy for a child. She whispered with a trembling voice, "Please, officer, follow me home." Those 5 words were not a request. They were a cry, filled with urgency and quiet desperation. What could be inside that home? What was she hiding? And why did her little eyes look so haunted, as if she had already seen the kind of darkness most adults never dare to face? This was the night when truth would surface, and everyone who heard her story would be left in tears. The little girl stood quietly in the pale glow of the streetlight. Her shoes didn't fit properly, her tiny arms wrapped around herself as though she was bracing against more than the night air. Officer Carter rolled down the window slowly. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Where's your mom or dad?" The girl glanced around, her lips trembling. "Please, just follow me home," she whispered again, her voice breaking like fragile glass. His partner, Officer Miller, raised a brow. This could be trouble, could be a setup. But Carter couldn't shake the way her voice clung to him. This wasn't a prank, nor was it a careless child wandering the street. This was something different. Something heavy. "All right," Carter said softly, stepping out of the car. He knelt down to her level. "We'll come with you. But you need to tell me your name." Where she hesitated, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. "Emily." And with that, she turned and began walking down the darkened street, her tiny figure swallowed by the night. The officers followed, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. But with every step, Carter felt an unshakable chill. Whatever waited at that home was not ordinary. At the corner of the street, Emily stopped suddenly and turned back with wide eyes. You can't make any noise," she whispered. "He'll hear you." The word "heh" sent a shiver down Carter's spine. Who was waiting inside that house? Emily led them down a narrow lane where the streetlights flickered and cracked like tired lungs. The houses here seemed forgotten, paint peeling, fences broken, windows covered with curtains that hid more than they revealed. When they reached a crooked gate, Emily froze. This is it. The house loomed before them, silent and oppressive. One of the windows had a faint yellow glow seeping through, but no sound came from inside. Carter crouched next to Emily. "Is your mom inside? Is she okay?" Emily's lip trembled. "Mom's sick, very sick." She took a breath, her eyes flicking nervously to the house. "But he doesn't let anyone help." Carter's brows knitted. "Who doesn't?" Her voice cracked into a whisper. "My stepdad." Miller sighed quietly, muttering, "Here we go." But Carter shot him a look. This wasn't routine. Something in Emily's face told him she wasn't exaggerating. Emily suddenly grabbed Carter's hand, her tiny fingers icy cold. "Promise me," she pleaded, tears welling up. "Promise you won't leave if it gets scary." The words pierced deeper than Carter expected. He gave a firm nod. "I promise." With that, Emily pushed the door open. The smell of stale alcohol and damp wood hit them immediately. The air felt thick, suffocating. They stepped into the shadowed hallway, their flashlights brushing against worn wallpaper and discarded bottles. The silence was suffocating, except for a faint cough echoing from deeper inside. Emily tugged at Carter's sleeve. "She's in there." She pointed toward a closed door. As Carter reached for the handle, a loud crash erupted upstairs, followed by heavy footsteps. Someone else was in the house, and they weren't happy about the uninvited guests. The air inside the house grew heavier with every breath. Dust particles floated lazily in the beam of Carter's flashlight, but beneath the stillness lurked tension, like the calm before a storm. Emily's grip tightened on his sleeve, her little fingernails digging into the fabric of his uniform. Her face was pale, and her lips quivered, yet she stood frozen, her eyes locked on the ceiling where the heavy footsteps had echoed moments ago. "Stay behind me," Carter whispered, keeping his voice low but firm. Miller's hand moved instinctively to the holster of his weapon. He shot Carter a sharp glance. You hear that? Someone's up there. Carter nodded slowly, then turned back to Emily. Is that him? Emily didn't answer at first. Her eyes glistened with tears as she nodded, her throat tightening as if the very word was poison. He doesn't like visitors. If he sees you here, he'll hurt you too. Her whisper sent a chill down Carter's spine. He crouched lower, eye level with her, forcing calm into his tone even though his heart hammered in his chest. Listen, Emily. You're safe now. Nothing's going to happen to you while we're here. Do you believe me? The little girl shook her head faintly, as if no promise could erase the fear carved into her young heart. A sharp thud above them made the floor creak, followed by a dragging sound, like someone moving furniture or perhaps something heavier. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. Then came a sound that froze them all. A man's voice. Emily. It thundered from upstairs, deep and menacing. Where are you? Emily flinched so hard that Carter felt it through her trembling hand. She pressed closer to him, burying her face against his side. Hey, Carter whispered softly, bending down. Look at me. Do you want us to get your mom out of here? Emily sniffled, nodding rapidly. Then you have to trust me. Can you do that? She bit her lip until it almost bled, but finally whispered. Yes. Carter rose and motioned for Miller to cover him. He approached the closed door Emily had pointed at earlier. His palm hovered above the handle for a moment before he slowly turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. Inside, a woman lay on a worn mattress on the floor. Her skin was pale, sweat dripping down her temples, her breathing shallow and ragged. Her wrist bore faint bruises, and her lips moved as if trying to form words, but only a weak cough escaped. Mum. Emily rushed past Carter before he could stop her, falling to her knees beside the frail figure. She clutched the woman's hand, her small shoulders shaking as tears rolled freely down her cheeks. The woman's eyes fluttered open at the sound of her daughter's voice. A faint smile tugged at her lips. Millie, you came back. Her voice was broken, barely more than a whisper. Carter's throat tightened. This was no ordinary illness. The woman looked starved, neglected, like someone who hadn't been allowed to heal. Miller muttered from the doorway, This is bad. We need medical backup now. He reached for his radio, but before he could speak, the sound of a door upstairs slamming shut echoed through the house. Heavy footsteps thundered down the staircase. Emily gasped and clung tighter to her mother. He's coming, she whispered in panic. Carter moved fast, stepping between the mother and daughter in the hallway. His hand hovered near his weapon, his body tense like a shield. A shadow stretched across the wall as the man appeared at the bottom of the stairs. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his face twisted with rage. His clothes were unkempt, his eyes bloodshot, and in his hand, glinting under the faint light, was a half-empty bottle of liquor. Well, the man snarled, his voice dripping with venom. Look who brought the cops into my house. His eyes locked onto Emily, and she froze like a deer in headlights. You just can't keep your mouth shut, can you? Emily whimpered, her tiny body shaking as her mother weakly tried to push herself up, whispering, Please not in front of her. The man sneered, ignoring her. He smashed the bottle against the wall, shards scattering across the floor. He pointed the jagged edge toward Carter. You don't belong here, officer. Get out before I make you regret it. Carter stood his ground, his heart pounding but his voice calm and unwavering. Put it down. Now no one has to get hurt tonight. The man's laugh was low and chilling. You don't get it, do you? She's mine. The girl, the woman, everything in this house is mine. Emily's sobs broke the silence, her cries echoing through the suffocating air. No, please don't hurt him, please. She clung to her mother, who tried desperately to hush her. For a split second, Carter saw something in the man's eyes. Not just rage, but something darker. Possession, a need for control. And in that moment, Carter knew this wasn't going to end with words. The man took a step closer, raising the jagged glass. Miller's hand was already on his weapon, his voice sharp. Drop it, now. But instead of obeying, the man grinned. A dangerous, twisted grin, and whispered something that made Carter's blood run cold. You think you know the truth? You have no idea what's in this house. And with that, he kicked something hidden behind the couch, a trapdoor. A loud creak filled the air as it swung open, revealing a dark cellar below. What was hidden there was worse than anyone could have imagined. The moment the trapdoor swung open, a smell of damp earth and mildew wafted into the room. The cellar beneath was swallowed in shadows, the faint beam of Carter's flashlight unable to pierce its depths. Emily gasped and buried her face into her mother's shoulder, as if she already knew the horrors that lay beneath. Her mother, weak as she was, tried to whisper through cracked lips, Don't let him take her down there. Her words struck Carter like a hammer. Take her. The stepfather smirked, his eyes glinting with cruel satisfaction. You think you're here to save them, officer? You're too late. What's mine stays mine. He waved the jagged glass bottle threateningly, the shards catching the dim light. But Carter wasn't focused on the weapon anymore. His eyes kept drifting toward the dark opening in the floor. Something about it gnawed at him. The smell, the silence, the chill rising from below like a grave's breath. Miller's weapon was drawn now, his voice booming. "Drop the bottle now. Don't make me repeat myself." The man laughed, the sound hollow and venomous. "You really think you can walk into my house and tell me what to do? This is my world. Down there," he jabbed a finger toward the trapdoor. "That's where the truth is. You'll wish you never came." Emily whimpered, clutching her mother tighter. Carter crouched beside them, trying to steady his voice. "Emily, look at me. What's down there? What's he talking about?" But Emily only shook her head violently, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Don't make me say it," she begged. The man roared suddenly, lunging forward. Miller fired a warning shot into the wall, the crack reverberating through the small room. The man froze, eyes wild, but he didn't back away. Instead, he snarled, "You shoot me, and you'll never know what's down there. And believe me, you want to know." For a tense moment, silence gripped the air. Carter's mind raced. Was this a bluff? Or was there truly something hidden in that cellar? Something that had kept Emily living in terror? Finally, Carter made a decision. He stepped toward the trapdoor, keeping his flashlight steady. "Then I'll see for myself." The stepfather's grin widened, twisted and cruel. "Go on. Take a look. Let the girl watch when you scream." The Carter ignored him, lowering himself carefully toward the wooden steps that descended into darkness. Each creak of the staircase echoed like thunder in the suffocating silence. His flashlight beam quivered as he swept it across the cellar walls. At first, he saw only bare concrete, damp patches, and rusted pipes. Then, something glinted, metal chains bolted into the walls. His chest tightened, and then he saw it, a small cot shoved into the corner. A child's toy, broken and abandoned, lay nearby. Next to it, scratched into the wall with what looked like desperate fingernails, were words, "Help us." Carter's breath caught. He lifted the beam higher and froze. There was another girl. She couldn't have been older than 9. Her eyes squinted painfully against the light, her frail body wrapped in a thin blanket. She pressed herself against the wall, trembling. "Please," she whispered hoarsely, her voice raw from silence. "Please don't let him take me again." Carter's stomach dropped, fury and horror battling inside him. There was another child trapped here this whole time. "Emily?" he shouted upward. "Emily, do you know her?" Emily's small voice cracked as she answered from above. "Her name's Lily, she's my sister." Her sister. Hidden away unseen, while Emily had been forced to keep the secret. Suddenly the stepfather roared in rage. "Shut up." He lunged for Emily, grabbing her arm with a violent grip. She screamed, her mother struggling weakly to pull her back. Carter scrambled up the steps, his flashlight swinging wildly. "Let her go." Miller advanced, his weapon raised. "This is your last warning. Drop her." But the man's face twisted with madness, spit flying as he shouted, "If I can't have them, nobody will." He yanked Emily toward the trapdoor, dragging her dangerously close to the opening. Emily shrieked, her small hands clawing desperately at the floor. Her mother cried out, her voice breaking with despair. "Please, don't take her down there." In the chaos, Lily's faint voice drifted up from the cellar, fragile but piercing. "He told me he was saving us, but he's lying." The stepfather froze for a split second, his wild eyes flicking downward. And in that brief moment, Carter moved. He lunged forward, tackling the man with every ounce of strength he had. They crashed to the floor, the jagged glass bottle skidding across the room. Emily scrambled free, running to her mother's arms. Miller swiftly kicked the bottle out of reach and pressed the muzzle of his gun to the man's temple. "It's over. Don't move." The man's chest heaved, his face contorting between rage and fear. But then, he smiled. "You think it's over? You think you've saved them?" His voice was low, almost taunting. "There are more. You don't even know where to look." And with those chilling words, the room fell silent. Because everyone knew he wasn't bluffing. The man's words echoed in the room like a curse. There are more. More children. More victims. The thought struck Carter's chest like an iron weight. Miller pressed his gun harder against the man's temple. "What the hell does that mean? Where are they?" The stepfather only chuckled darkly, the sound raw and unsettling. "You'll never find them in time." "Time for what?" Carter snapped, his voice sharp as steel. But he didn't get an answer, only a sinister smirk that made his stomach twist. Emily was still sobbing, her mother cradling her weakly, as if protecting her with the last ounce of strength she had. Lily, the hidden girl in the cellar, shivered violently beneath her thin blanket, staring wide-eyed at the man above as though seeing a monster crawl out of her nightmares. Carter crouched low beside the stepfather, gripping his shirt collar, forcing his gaze. "Listen to me. If you've hurt any other children, if you've hidden them somewhere else, this is your last chance to come clean." But the man only whispered, almost gloating. "You'll never understand, they're mine. They all are. A rage burned hot in Carter's chest. He wanted to hit him, shake him until the truth spilled out. But he couldn't. He was an officer, and rage wouldn't save the children. Truth would. Miller handcuffed the man roughly, muttering through clenched teeth, "You'll rot in prison." The man just sneered. Prison won't stop what's already been done. Carter's jaw tightened, but he turned away, focusing on the girls. He carefully descended into the cellar again and extended his hand toward Lily. "It's all right, sweetheart. You're safe now. No one will hurt you again." Lily's frail hand trembled as she slipped it into his. The moment her small fingers touched his, Carter felt the chill of her suffering seep into him. She weighed almost nothing as he lifted her into his arms, her ribs pressing sharply through her skin. When Lily's eyes met Emily's, both sisters burst into tears, clinging to each other with desperate strength. Emily buried her face in her sister's hair, whispering over and over, "I missed you. I missed you." Their mother wept softly, her hands trembling as she tried to reach for them. "My babies, he told me Lily was gone forever. He made me believe." Her voice cracked, her body shaking with grief. Carter swallowed hard, his throat burning. He couldn't imagine the torment, believing your child was dead, only to discover she had been suffering just a few steps beneath your feet all this time. The moment felt heavy, almost sacred. But it was shattered by the man's laughter. "You think you saved them?" His voice was mocking, triumphant despite being pinned on the floor. "Check the basement walls. Then you'll see what kind of savior you really are." Miller cursed under his breath, shoving him down harder. "He's bluffing. Just trying to mess with us." But Carter wasn't so sure. He had seen the look in Lily's eyes, the haunted emptiness, the kind that didn't come from being locked away alone. It came from seeing things no child should ever see. He scanned the cellar again, this time sweeping the flashlight across the walls more carefully. At first, he only saw cracks and water stains. But then, faintly he noticed it, lines, carved deep into the stone names. Dozens of them. Some were scratched faintly, as if carved by trembling hands. Others were etched deep, desperate, almost carved into the wall with blood. Carter's blood ran cold. These weren't just random marks. They were the names of children. He felt the weight of the air shift. Lily's voice, fragile and trembling, broke the silence. "Hey, he used to bring others. They never stayed." She pointed a shaky finger at the names. They wrote those before they. Her voice collapsed, her body trembling uncontrollably. Emily clutched her tighter, covering her ears as though she didn't want to hear the rest. The mother broke into sobs, rocking back and forth, whispering apologies that could never undo the years of silence and fear. Carter's vision blurred with anger and grief. This wasn't just abuse. This was something far darker, far more sinister. And if the names were real, if the children were real, then the truth of what happened to them could shake the city to its core. He climbed out of the cellar, his jaw clenched. "Miller, we need backup. Now. This place needs to be torn apart, every inch." Miller nodded, calling it in. Within moments, the distant wail of sirens filled the night, growing closer. But as the sound approached, Carter noticed something. The man wasn't afraid. He wasn't worried. He was smiling. And just before the backup burst through the front door, the man leaned toward Carter and whispered, "You're digging in the wrong house." The words sank like ice into Carter's veins. "You're digging in the wrong house." For a moment, everything else blurred. The sirens outside, the muffled voices of arriving officers, the sound of Emily's sobs clinging to her sister. All Carter could hear was the man's whisper replaying in his head. "What do you mean?" Carter demanded, his voice sharp, but the stepfather only smirked, blood seeping from a cut above his brow where Carter had tackled him. "You think you found the secret?" The man chuckled darkly. "This place is just a shadow. The real nightmare is 2 streets away." The miller grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the floorboards. "Where? Tell us now, or so help me." The man spat blood, his grin widening. "You'll see soon enough. But I doubt you'll make it in time." The cruelty in his tone made Carter's chest burn. He wanted to shake the truth out of him, but another sound pulled his attention. Emily's broken cry. "Don't leave us," she whispered, her small hand clutching at Carter's pant leg. "Please don't go. If you leave, he'll come back." Carter knelt beside her, softening his voice though his pulse was racing. "He's not coming back, Emily. Look around you." He gestured toward the uniformed officers storming in, guns drawn, voices commanding. "You're safe now. He'll never hurt you again." But Emily shook her head violently, her tears spilling down her cheeks. "You don't understand. He's not the only one." Her words struck deeper than any knife. "Not the only one." Carter felt the weight of the puzzle pressing in. Emily's plea, Lily's terror, the names carved into the cellar walls, and now this. It was bigger than one cruel man. Something larger was hidden, something that had left scars on these children's souls. He squeezed Emily's hand gently. "I'll be back, I promise. I just need to make sure no other children are in danger." Her wide, frightened eyes searched his face as if testing his promise. Finally, she nodded slowly, though her grip didn't loosen. Miller pulled Carter aside, his voice low. This could be a setup. He's playing with us. We can't chase shadows without backup. Carter's jaw tightened. And what if he's not? What if there are more kids locked up while we're standing here arguing? His voice cracked with urgency. We can't risk it, Miller. The room filled with the hum of radios and boots. Medics rushed to the mother, trying to stabilize her frail frame, while officers secured the man in cuffs so tight his skin turned white. Yet through it all, Carter's mind raced with the same haunting question. What if he was telling the truth? Finally, Carter pulled rank. I'm going. Send a unit to the address 2 streets over. Now, minutes later, Carter and Miller climbed back into their patrol car, the night pressing down heavy around them. The sirens faded behind them as they turned onto a dimly lit block. The houses here were even older, more forgotten. Many windows were boarded up, graffiti crawling across the walls. But one house stood out, not because it was cared for, but because it was too quiet. No dogs barking, no lights flickering, no sound at all. Carter parked at the curb, his eyes locked on the sagging porch. That's it. Miller frowned. Looks abandoned. Exactly, Carter muttered. They approached slowly, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The porch groaned beneath their boots. Carter's hand hovered over his holster as he turned the doorknob. To his surprise, it opened easily, swinging inward with a creak that set his nerves on edge. The air inside was colder, thick with mold. Dust clung to every surface, and cobwebs laced the corners. But something about the silence felt wrong, like the house itself was holding its breath. They moved cautiously through the front room. Empty bottles littered the floor, the wallpaper peeling in jagged strips. In the corner, a single chair faced the wall, as though someone had been sitting for hours, staring into nothing. Clear, Miller muttered, sweeping his light. But Carter shook his head. No. Listen. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, faint and hollow, came a sound. A whimper. Carter's chest tightened. He dropped to one knee, pressing his ear to the warped wooden planks. There it was again, fragile, broken. A child's voice. Help, please. Miller's face went pale. Jesus Christ. They tore through the room until Carter found it, another trapdoor hidden under a tattered rug. His hands shook as he pulled it open, the hinges screaming. The darkness below seemed endless. Police? Carter shouted down, his voice echoing. Is anyone there? A pause. Then, faintly, several voices, small, trembling, desperate. Yes! Please! We're here! Carter's breath hitched. There wasn't just one child this time. There were many. Miller's flashlight cut through the blackness, and what it revealed made Carter's heart seize. Faces. 6 children huddled together, their eyes wide with fear, their clothes torn and dirty. They shrank from the light as if it burned them, but their eyes pleaded for rescue. Carter's throat tightened, his voice breaking as he whispered, Dear God. And then from the shadows deeper within, a figure stirred. Not a child. An adult. A woman stepped forward slowly, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow, as though life itself had been drained from her. But when she spoke, her voice carried something even darker than the stepfather's grin had. You shouldn't have come here, she whispered. He'll be back soon. The wind outside howled against the windows, carrying with it the cold bite of the night. Inside the tiny house, silence had settled like a heavy blanket. Elena sat at the edge of the bed, her face pale, her hands trembling as if she had just seen a ghost. Across from her, Officer Daniel leaned against the wall, arms folded, his sharp eyes fixed on her, waiting. The little girl Sophie was asleep now, curled up on the couch with a threadbare blanket covering her small frame. Every rise and fall of her chest was a reminder of her innocence, an innocence wrapped in shadows too dark for someone her age to carry. Elena finally broke the silence, her voice cracking like old wood. You don't understand, officer. If you knew the truth, you'd take her away from me. Daniel's eyes softened for a moment, but his voice was steady. Then help me understand. Because right now, what I see is a scared woman and a child who clearly trusts you with her life. That doesn't happen by accident. Tell me what you're hiding. Elena looked away, her gaze landing on the wooden dresser across the room. Its top drawer seemed to call to her, as if the weight of its contents was pressing down on her heart. After a long pause, she stood, her legs weak beneath her, and slowly walked toward it. Her hand lingered over the handle before she finally pulled it open. Inside was a single photograph, worn at the edges, its colors faded with time. She held it for a moment, her fingers trembling, then handed it to Daniel. He took it carefully, his brows furrowing as he studied the image. It showed a smiling man in uniform, his arms wrapped around a much younger Elena, and in the middle, a little girl with bright blue eyes who looked exactly like Sophie. Daniel's throat went dry. Is this? Elena nodded, tears spilling over her cheeks. That's Sophie's father, and that's me long before all of this. Daniel blinked in shock. But this doesn't make sense. Sophie said her father was gone. Elena sat back down heavily, clutching her knees as though holding herself together. He was a police officer, your colleague once. His name was Adam. We were in love, but something happened. Something terrible. Adam was framed for corruption he didn't commit. They destroyed him, stripped him of everything, and when he tried to prove his innocence, he disappeared. No one ever saw him again. Her voice broke as she whispered the next words. And Sophie never knew the truth. She thinks he left us. I let her believe that because, what good is the truth when it only destroys what little hope she has left? Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. The pieces didn't quite fit, but the weight of Elena's words pressed against him. He looked back at the photograph, the smile of the man in uniform haunting him. What does this have to do with tonight? He asked quietly. Elena hesitated, her eyes flickering to the sleeping child. Because I've seen men watching us. Men who look like they're waiting for something. Sophie led you here for a reason. She feels it too. Danger circling us like wolves. And I believe it's connected to Adam. Someone doesn't want the truth about what happened to him to ever come out. The room seemed to shrink around them, every shadow darker, every sound sharper. Daniel's pulse raced. He had thought he was walking into a simple case of neglect or abuse, but this was something much deeper. Before he could ask another question, a sudden noise shattered the stillness. A creak on the porch. Elena's head snapped toward the door, her eyes wide with fear. She grabbed Daniel's arm, her grip surprisingly strong. They're here. Daniel instinctively reached for his holster, his senses heightened. He moved toward the window and peeked through the thin curtain. What he saw made his blood run cold. Two men stood outside, their faces hidden beneath dark hoods. One of them was holding something metallic that glinted under the dim porch light. They weren't neighbors. They weren't visitors. They were waiting. Daniel's mind raced. Whoever they were, they hadn't expected him to be here. That gave him the smallest advantage. But the danger was real, immediate, and pressing in on all sides. He turned back to Elena, whispering urgently, "Lock the back door. Keep Sophie quiet. Don't open this door unless it's me." Her eyes searched his desperately. "Daniel, if they take her." "They won't," he said firmly, though inside, doubt gnawed at him. The front door knob rattled once, twice. A voice, low and sharp, cut through the night. "We know you're in there." Elena clutched Sophie tighter, who had stirred awake from the noise. Daniel drew his weapon and positioned himself near the door, his breath steady, his finger tight against the trigger guard. The next second, a loud knock boomed through the house, shaking the walls. And then a second voice whispered from outside, chilling Daniel to his core. "Give us the girl." The next morning, Sarah woke up with a heaviness that pressed against her chest. She hadn't slept much. The memory of the girl's frightened eyes haunted her dreams. Every time she closed her own, she saw those tiny hands clutching her uniform, those words echoing, "Please follow me home." But what gnawed at Sarah's heart even more was the discovery in the living room, the shattered glass frame and the photo of Mr. Collins with a woman who bore an uncanny resemblance to Anna. Who was she? Why had he hidden it? Sarah decided she couldn't carry the weight of suspicion alone anymore. She pulled out her phone and dialed Detective Marcus. His gravelly voice answered almost immediately. "Sarah, you sound like you haven't slept." "I didn't." "Marcus, you need to see something. I found a photo in Collins' house. It's strange. And there might be more." There was a pause. "Don't touch anything. I'll meet you there." An hour later, they were standing in Collins' dimly lit living room. The morning sunlight filtered through curtains half drawn, casting long shadows across the floor. Sarah pointed to the broken frame lying on the rug. Marcus crouched, lifting the photograph carefully by its edges. Definitely not random. This wasn't an accident. He glanced up at Sarah. "You're right. This girl could be Anna's mother." The possibility chilled Sarah. If this woman was indeed connected to Anna, why would Collins keep it hidden? And why had he reacted so defensively? As they searched the house together, Sarah noticed something she'd missed before, a pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling, the attic. Her heart skipped. "Marcus, there." He looked up, then nodded. "Let's see." The ladder creaked as they pulled it down. Dust rained from the edges. Sarah climbed first, flashlight in hand, her pulse drumming against her ribs. The attic smelled of mothballs and something older, heavier, like time itself had been sealed away. Cardboard boxes lined the wooden beams. Old suitcases, covered in cobwebs, sat stacked like silent witnesses. Sarah's beam landed on a large trunk shoved against the wall. It was locked with a rusted latch but not secured with a padlock. She knelt, her hands trembling as she flipped it open. Inside lay piles of yellowed papers, children's toys, and photographs. She pulled one free and gasped. It was the same woman from the broken frame, younger, holding a baby in her arms, a baby with Anna's same wide eyes. Her stomach tightened. "Marcus, look at this." He leaned over, eyes narrowing. "That's Anna, no doubt." A photo after photo revealed the same story. A woman, radiant but fragile, standing with Anna as a toddler. In some, Mr. Collins appeared beside them, smiling, a family portrait of three. But then the photos changed. The woman's smile grew forced, her eyes darker. In the last image, she looked frail, almost ghost-like, her arm protectively wrapped around Anna. And then, nothing. The photos stopped. Sarah flipped through the rest of the trunk. Among the old toys and clothes, she found a folded letter. She unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. If anything happens to me, please take care of Anna. She is all I have. They won't stop until they find us. Please, keep her safe. The letter was unsigned, but Sarah knew instantly. It was from Anna's mother. Her throat tightened. Someone had been after this woman. Someone dangerous. Marcus frowned, rubbing his temples. So Collins wasn't hiding Anna. He was protecting her. Sarah swallowed hard, the weight of realization pressing down. But from who? And why didn't he tell anyone? Before Marcus could answer, a sudden sound echoed from below. The faint creak of the front door. They froze. Someone else was in the house. Marcus quickly motioned for silence, pulling out his weapon. Sarah held her breath, the air thick with tension. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, moved across the wooden floorboards downstairs. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to hide. Marcus whispered, "Stay here." But Sarah couldn't. She clutched the photograph in her hand, her heart thundering. She had a terrible feeling. This wasn't Collins. The footsteps grew louder, stopping directly below the attic hatch. Then creak. The ladder shifted as though someone had touched it. Sarah's blood ran cold. Whoever was down there knew they were here. And then a voice, low, almost taunting, drifted upward. "You shouldn't have come back here." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. She knew that voice. It wasn't Collins, it was someone she thought had vanished years ago. The room was drenched in silence after Officer Daniel's declaration. The faint ticking of the old clock on the wall felt like a drumbeat, each second pulling Sarah and Daniel deeper into the truth they feared uncovering. On the table lay the worn leather diary Emma had clutched like a lifeline. Daniel carefully opened it. The pages smelled of dust and time, the handwriting small and shaky, but urgent. The first entry read, "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep my promise. Please, whoever you are, help Emma. She's stronger than she knows, but I fear what's coming." Sarah's breath caught. This is the mother's voice, she whispered, almost reverently. Daniel nodded, continuing. "It says here Emma's mother discovered something dangerous. She found out her husband wasn't who she thought he was." Sarah leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Daniel turned the page, his face tightening. He was involved in something criminal. And she wrote that she wanted to leave, but he wouldn't let her. And Emma, sitting small and silent on the sofa, hugged her knees. Her big eyes followed every word, as if she had been waiting for someone to confirm what she already knew deep inside. Sarah gently reached out, tucking a strand of Emma's hair behind her ear. "Sweetheart, you're safe here. We'll protect you." But Emma didn't smile. Instead, her tiny voice cracked the silence. "Mommy said Daddy had shadows." Sarah froze. "Shadows?" Emma nodded. "Men in black cars. They came at night. They whispered with Daddy. Mommy cried and told me never to open the door." Daniel and Sarah exchanged a look. This was no longer just about a broken family. This was bigger. Daniel read further. The entries became darker, more desperate. "They're watching us. He doesn't know I found his papers, but I can't let Emma be part of this. If something happens to me, someone must follow Emma. She'll show them the way." Sarah's heart raced. She did show us. That's why she came to the station. The next entry made Daniel's hands tremble. He said if I try to run, he'll make sure Emma disappears too. I can't risk it. But I have proof hidden where no one will find it except Emma. Emma perked up suddenly, eyes wide as if a secret had just resurfaced. "The box," she whispered. Sarah turned to her gently. "What box, sweetheart?" Emma's lips trembled. "Mommy told me that if something bad happened, I should take the police to the box. But she said Daddy must never, ever find it." Daniel's pulse quickened. "Where is it, Emma?" Emma hesitated, fear clouding her young face. Then, she whispered so softly it was almost inaudible, "The garden. Under the tree." Sarah's eyes widened. "The same tree?" Emma nodded. "Yes. The one with the angels." Daniel slammed the diary shut, his decision made. "We need to go. Right now." The drive back to Emma's house was suffocating with tension. The night air pressed heavy against the windshield as the patrol car sliced through empty streets. Emma sat between them, silent, clutching Sarah's hand like a lifeline. As they pulled up near the house, Sarah felt the air shift. The once familiar, eerie silence of the neighborhood now carried weight. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the lawn, as though the darkness itself was watching. Emma pointed, her small finger trembling. There, under the big tree, the garden was haunting in the moonlight. The angel statues stood like silent sentinels, their stone faces cracked, their wings chipped, but their presence undeniable. Daniel grabbed a small spade from the trunk. He began to dig, the soil damp and stubborn, while Sarah held Emma close. Minutes stretched into an eternity until clunk. Daniel's spade struck something solid. He dropped to his knees, scraping away dirt with his bare hands until a small metal box emerged. Rusted, dented, but locked. He pried it open. Inside were documents, photos, files, bank statements, and flash drives. Each piece screamed of hidden dealings, transactions worth millions, names of people tied to something far larger than they could have imagined. Sarah's blood ran cold. This isn't just domestic abuse. This is organized crime. Daniel's jaw tightened. And her father was right in the middle of it. Emma's small hand gripped Sarah's sleeve. Her voice quivered. If Daddy knows you have the box, he'll come. As if on cue, headlights suddenly cut through the dark, washing over the garden. A car engine roared to a stop on the curb. Daniel instinctively pulled Emma and Sarah back behind him, his hand on his holster. The driver's door creaked open, and from the darkness a familiar figure stepped out, his shadow stretching long across the lawn. Emma's face went pale. Her small voice broke the silence. Daddy. The room was drenched in silence after Officer Daniel's declaration. The faint ticking of the old clock on the wall felt like a drumbeat, each second pulling Sarah and Daniel deeper into the truth they feared uncovering. On the table lay the worn leather diary Emma had clutched like a lifeline. Daniel carefully opened it. The pages smelled of dust and time, the handwriting small and shaky, but urgent. The first entry read, "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep my promise. Please, whoever you are, help Emma. She's stronger than she knows, but I fear what's coming." Sarah's breath caught. This is the mother's voice," she whispered, almost reverently. Daniel nodded, continuing. "It says here, Emma's mother discovered something dangerous. She found out her husband wasn't who she thought he was." Sarah leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Daniel turned the page, his face tightening. He was involved in something criminal, and she wrote that she wanted to leave, but he wouldn't let her. Emma, sitting small and silent on the sofa, hugged her knees. Her big eyes followed every word, as if she had been waiting for someone to confirm what she already knew deep inside. Sarah gently reached out, tucking a strand of Emma's hair behind her ear. "Sweetheart, you're safe here. We'll protect you." But Emma didn't smile. Instead, her tiny voice cracked the silence. "Mommy said Daddy had shadows." Sarah froze. "Shadows." Emma nodded. "Men in black cars, they came at night. They whispered with Daddy. Mommy cried and told me never to open the door." Daniel and Sarah exchanged a look. This was no longer just about a broken family. This was bigger. Daniel read further. The entries became darker, more desperate. "They're watching us. He doesn't know I found his papers, but I can't let Emma be part of this. If something happens to me, someone must follow Emma. She'll show them the way." Sarah's heart raced. She did show us. That's why she came to the station. The next entry made Daniel's hands tremble. He said if I try to run, he'll make sure Emma disappears too. I can't risk it. But I have proof hidden where no one will find it except Emma. Emma perked up suddenly, eyes wide as if a secret had just resurfaced. "The box," she whispered. Sarah turned to her gently. "What box, sweetheart?" Emma's lips trembled. "Mommy told me if something bad happened, I should take the police to the box. But she said Daddy must never, ever find it." Daniel's pulse quickened. "Where is it, Emma?" Emma hesitated, fear clouding her young face. Then, she whispered so softly it was almost inaudible, "The garden. Under the tree." Sarah's eyes widened. "The same tree?" And Emma nodded. "Yes, the one with the angels." Daniel slammed the diary shut, his decision made. "We need to go. Right now." The drive back to Emma's house was suffocating with tension. The night air pressed heavy against the windshield as the patrol car sliced through empty streets. Emma sat between them, silent, clutching Sarah's hand like a lifeline. As they pulled up near the house, Sarah felt the air shift. The once familiar, eerie silence of the neighborhood now carried weight. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the lawn, as though the darkness itself was watching. Emma pointed, her small finger trembling. There, under the big tree. The garden was haunting in the moonlight. The angel statues stood like silent sentinels, their stone faces cracked, their wings chipped, but their presence undeniable. Daniel grabbed a small spade from the trunk. He began to dig, the soil damp and stubborn, while Sarah held Emma close. Minutes stretched into an eternity until, clunk, Daniel's spade struck something solid. He dropped to his knees, scraping away dirt with his bare hands until a small metal box emerged. Rusted, dented, but locked. He pried it open. Inside were documents, photos, files, bank statements, and flash drives. Each piece screamed of hidden dealings, transactions worth millions, names of people tied to something far larger than they could have imagined. Sarah's blood ran cold. This isn't just domestic abuse. This is organized crime. Daniel's jaw tightened, and her father was right in the middle of it. And Emma's small hand gripped Sarah's sleeve. Her voice quivered. "If Daddy knows you have the box, he'll come." As if on cue, headlights suddenly cut through the dark, washing over the garden. A car engine roared to a stop on the curb. Daniel instinctively pulled Emma and Sarah back behind him, his hand on his holster. The driver's door creaked open, and from the darkness a familiar figure stepped out, his shadow stretching long across the lawn. Emma's face went pale. Her small voice broke the silence. "Daddy." But deep inside, Daniels wondered, if Claire had hidden this truth for so long, what else had she kept buried in silence?
This is the heartbreaking journey of a little girl who carried the weight of a secret no child should ever bear. With courage far beyond her years, she led the police to a truth that shattered silence and exposed hidden pain. But from the darkness of her home rose a story of resilience, compassion, and the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. A story that proves even the smallest